everyone. Welcome to the Q1 BRG Archibus Users Group. My name is Nicole, and I'm your facilitator for today. I'd like to briefly run through our agenda. We'll begin with an end-user spotlight from Enbridge, a leading North American energy company based in Canada. Then we'll move on to a sneak preview of Archibus version 21.1. And finally, we'll go through 3 Archibus tips and tricks that are featured in our most recent white paper, IWMS Insights, Another Look at What Archibus Can Offer You and Your Organization. Each section of the users group will be timed at 30 minutes, 30 to 45. As always, if you have any questions, please use the WebEx Q&A feature to log them. We will attempt to answer any questions you may have at the end of each section. If we do not get to them, we'll respond to each of you individually. All right, we have a lot to cover today, so let's begin our end-user spotlight.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. Your busy schedules, we do appreciate it. Today, I'm going to be presenting with Margaret Beaton from Enbridge Pipelines, and we'll be discussing, as you see here, building a foundation for rapid, sustainable employee growth surrounding space and cost management. We'll be discussing in quite a bit of detail Enbridge's growth in the last few years and how Archibus and the implementation of various applications within Archibus have helped them manage that growth. To give you some background here, Margaret Beaton, who's with us today, I've personally been working with Margaret for over 2 years. Margaret is a results-driven, get-real kind of person, which is part of the reason we really enjoy working with her, who has advanced Enbridge's Edmonton and Calgary facility management services quite substantially in the past 2 years, seeing them implement a series of applications and improve business processes and systems integration within the facilities group. Margaret, as you see here, has held various roles within Enbridge, of which one was dedicated to the Alberta Clipper Pipeline project. And just to give you a bit of background on that project, it's about 1,607 kilometers, or a 1,000-mile crude oil pipeline. It currently provides service between a place in Alberta, which is in Western Canada, Hardisty, Alberta, to Superior, Wisconsin. That pipeline capacity is about 450,000 barrels per day, with an ultimate capacity working up to about 800,000 barrels per day. So quite a large project. And then Margaret's role changed in 2009, moving more into the strategic and tactical planning for Enbridge's largest office holdings, which is in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So we're glad to have Margaret with us today, and Margaret will be presenting a number of the slides as we move forward. Myself here, I'm not sure when 20 years passed, but over 20 years, I'm not sure where the time goes. As a side note, my son asked me the other day, he said, "Dad, in the olden days, before debit cards, how did people pay for things?" So olden days, I never thought I'd be in reference to olden days, but here I am. So it gave me some perspective on how quickly time can pass, and also gave me some context and appreciation for how much Enbridge has accomplished in a relatively short time frame. In my 20 years experience, I've worked with Canadian National Railway in both the land management and facilities management departments, so I've been in the trenches as well on the client side, as well as I was a construction manager with Rocky View School Division prior to starting a company called Idasys, who was recently acquired by BRG, and Idasys was in business successfully with a fantastic client base for over 13 years, and I'm very pleased to be here today as part of the BRG team and still working with Enbridge on their implementation. So one quick housekeeping item. If you have any questions, please hold them to the end of the session. Feel free to write them down or ask them within the WebEx itself, and we can respond to those questions towards the end of the presentation. Thanks. So a quick overview of our agenda today. We'll give you a little history on Enbridge. We'll run through some of their challenges and pain points, the time frame for the project. Again, looking at specific challenges and how we set up environments a little more on the technical side to address those challenges. Looking at where we have taken opportunities to improve business process and information management, as well as looking at what we've learned through the process and where we are headed with the project. And then, of course, the questions and answers. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Margaret, who will give us an overview of Enbridge, the company.
Hi, everybody. It's Margaret Beaton from Enbridge. If you want to flip to the next slide. There we go. So as Todd said, Enbridge is we're actually a transportation company, and we transport and distribute energy mainly across North America. And in this slide, I decided to run a quick number of how many people we had in Canada and the U.S. because this number I actually got a few months ago. And at the end of 2012, we were actually closer to 7,000 people in Canada and the United States. We did a lot of growing last year. Some facts about Enbridge. Our name actually means energy bridge, which makes sense considering what we do. We run the world's longest crude oil and liquid pipeline system that runs across Canada and the U.S. We've been in operation for over 60 years. We have approximately 13,500 kilometers of pipeline, so that's over 8,000 miles. And we deliver more than 2 million barrels per day of crude oil and liquids. So this is just a summary of some of our priorities and our values. So our main locations are in Toronto, Calgary, Superior, Houston, Edmonton, and of course all along the spread we have various field offices, some of which are actually buildings, but many of which are movable trailers. So in 2012, it was recognized that we had a lot of projects to get done to support our business. So it was announced that we would be looking at a net new headcount of about 2,000 people. Roughly half these positions were expected to be filled in Edmonton, which is in the office buildings, and also field staff. So we had our work cut out for us. So in order to do this, we basically secured, renovated, and occupied 220 square feet of new office space, mostly in the downtown core of Edmonton. And we did all of that within a 12-month period. So our seated headcount went from about 1,550 in January to about 1,950 by December. We've looked at our growth rate for 2013, and we're still expecting at least another 20% growth for this year. So this just gives some growth history for us. So you can see in 2007, we're around the 800 mark. And within 5 years, we're almost to the 2,000 mark, and this is in Edmonton. I put another chart there that displays what our growth was by month for 2012. So you can see we kind of had it, we really quickly ramped up to about the August-September time frame, and then it leveled out a bit. So these numbers are basically from the end of 2012. So we had about 2,050 people seated. And some of those don't show in that chart because there's areas that are seated but not exactly in office space. So we still count them as head count, but not as using space. We now have 6 buildings in the Edmonton and area. Our square footage is 660,000. That's getting closer to 700,000 now because we've added some additional smaller spaces to help service these 6 buildings that we have in Edmonton. We have a pretty healthy vacancy rate right now at 27%, but again, we're expecting, that to drop quite a bit with our hires that we're expecting in 2013. So we hope we're ahead of the game this year. The new hires that we took on in 2012, which includes our backfill positions, were 881. And we did a whopping 2,262 moves during the year. So here's a look at our 2013 forecast. Looks to be around 400 people we're expecting again for this year within Edmonton, although that number tends to be a little bit fluid given different projects and the addition of projects mostly. And this number here, we always give ourselves a bit of a 10% management factor in case we do have surprises, so this includes that management factor. And then I just wanted to update you on the positions that we filled and seated. To February 11th, it was 130. I checked today, and we're now at 198. So at the end of Q1, we're close to being halfway there. So here's a look at what our portfolio is right now. We have 179 spaces in City Center Place, 304 in Manulife Place, over 1,000 in Enbridge Place. We have 94 spaces at Royal Bank, almost 400 at TD Tower now, and the Enbridge Tower, which is our main tower, is almost 700. So you can see we've tried to position the major departments within the various buildings and adjacencies, and we've been lucky that we've been able so far to do a pretty good job of that. We also have 2 smaller buildings that we manage that's outside of the core, and those buildings are more set for our regional staff members. So this is just an aerial shot of downtown Edmonton. You can see Manulife Place kind of sits in the middle, and then it spirals out from there. So we really are only within a few blocks of each other, but it is a bit of a challenge having so many buildings.